The first time I noticed the ceiling light stutter, I counted 3 full blinks before it settled into its usual dull glow. That was Monday morning, 8:43 a.m., right after I swiped my badge and trudged past the reception desk where Sandra was pretending to be busy with a stack of FedEx envelopes. She gave me the same half-smile she always did, the kind that said I'd rather be anywhere else, but at least I'm not in accounting. I walked into the cubicle bay, sat down at my desk, and opened my email with the same grim certainty as a person opening a medical bill. And there it was, the automated request denied notice from HR system. My 2-week vacation request, the one I'd been building up to for 5 years, gone. Vanished into the void. I stared at the screen until the hum of the old fluorescent fixture above my desk became unbearable. It sounded like the building itself was mocking me. "Something wrong?" came a voice from the next cubicle. It was Mark, my coworker who never learned the art of whispering. "Nothing," I said, forcing my jaw to unclench. "Just system glitch." But I knew better. I had filed my vacation request 6 weeks in advance, carefully aligned with project cycles, uploaded all the approvals, and even attached the ridiculous spreadsheet that HR demanded. And now, according to the system, there was no trace. No request. No paper trail. Nothing. Except I knew there was. Because I was the one who trained half this company on how to use the HR portal. And if there's one thing I trust, it's an audit log. By noon, I was sipping burnt coffee in the break room, pretending to be fine while the CEO's voice boomed from the glass conference room down the hall. Jonathan Pierce, 49 years old, fond of custom suits and Italian vacations. He was the kind of boss who said teamwork while forwarding your idea to a client under his own signature. "Pierce is heading out Thursday," Sandra whispered when she joined me at the counter, sliding a stale donut onto a napkin. "Italy again. Amalfi Coast this time." I heard him bragging to finance. 2 weeks in Amalfi. That was my 2 weeks. The exact same window I'd requested. I smiled politely, but inside, something cold snapped into place. That night, in my apartment, the stack of HR policy binders lay open on my kitchen table. I had every revision marked with sticky notes. I also had the login timestamps from the vacation request system saved on a flash drive, my flash drive, because unlike most of my coworkers, I knew that metadata is just another word for leverage. As I scrolled through the entries, I saw it. My request logged, approved by my manager, and then deleted. At 11:07 p.m. on a Friday night. Not a system glitch. A person. And the funny thing about digital ghosts? They never really disappear. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the hum of my refrigerator, and thought, Jonathan Pierce may be in Italy sipping limoncello soon, but I've just found the crack in his glass. This wasn't the end of my vacation. No, this was just chapter 1. At 11:07 p.m., someone erased me. Not my body, my existence on the HR portal. Same effect though. My 2 weeks, my Amalfi, my sanity, deleted like a typo. I got to the office early, when the lobby still smelled like floor wax and the exit signs hummed like neon crickets. The keycard reader gave its small green blink, and I slipped into the quiet maze of cubicles. The fluorescents hadn't fully warmed up, everything looked washed in aquarium light. I went straight to the print server corner, my corner, where the beige tower under the counter kicks out more heat than the break room toaster. I logged into the admin dashboard I'm authorized to use, training others has perks, pulled the HR portal audit, and exported the log. There it was again, my request created, approved by my manager on June 3rd at 2:12 p.m., then hard deleted on July 12th at 11:07 p.m. Deleting a PTO request isn't standard. It leaves a little chalk outline in the database. I printed the outline. Noah Patel from IT drifted in, hoodie and headphones, carrying the eternal paper cup of tea that smells like childhood and cardboard. Morning, Maya. Printer being a diva? Always, I said. Quick question. Do we still have executive proxy accounts? The ones that end in assist. He raised an eyebrow. Yes, for calendar routing. Only EA should use them. Why? Curiosity. I slid a stapled packet off the output tray before he could glance down. I'm writing a training refresher. Uh-huh. He smirked. Then you'll love this. We had activity last Friday night from J. Pierce Assist. Calendar edits, not system-wide. I flagged it because it came from offsite. He shrugged. VPN endpoint in Tuscany. Fancy. Good to know, I said, keeping my face steady while my spine lit up like a fuse. By 9, the office had filled with the usual morning choreography, Mark tapping a pen against his mug, Sandra fielding a call with customer service politeness and prison yard eyes. I made myself a cup of whatever the machine called coffee and opened my spreadsheet, the one that counted out my vacation days like a rosary of small freedoms. 112 hours banked. HR converts salaried PTO to an hourly equivalent at $37.50 for my role, $78,000 divided by 2,080. Meaning my 2 weeks were worth $4,200 of actual life. Real money, real time, real Amalfi lemons I wasn't tasting. I pulled up the HR policy binder in PDF, Policy 5. 2. 1. Denial of PTO requests must include written rationale within 3 business days. I had waited 6 weeks. No rationale. Just a ghost. Lydia Cho, our HR director, materialized at the glass corridor like a sleek heron, tall, precise, wearing a navy dress that could cut you. Maya, she said, pausing at my cube entrance. We should talk. I saw your resubmission. Absolutely, I said. I'll bring paperwork. Conference B at 11, she said, already moving. Conference B, the fishbowl room. Perfect. At 10:15, I ducked into the maintenance closet behind the copy room. It smells like wet dust, lemon cleaner, and the iron tang of old pipes. I set my binder on the metal shelf. Audit logs, policy printouts, and a single-page letter I drafted last night. Request for employee records under our internal compliance Rule 3. 9. I'd counted the calendar metadata too. Jonathan Pierce created a private event titled Operation Sync the minute after my deletion, 11:09 p.m. through the J. Pierce Assist account. His executive assistant, Camille Hart, is the only person authorized to use that proxy. Camille, who once asked me how to color-code calendars and then treated me like a collapsible chair. I slipped the letter into a manila folder, labeled it in block pen, and breathed in the cold of the pipes until my head felt sharp. Conference B's glass walls squeaked when I slid the door. Lydia sat with the HR portal open on a tablet. Beside her, Ethan Mallory, my manager, all soft voice and corduroy energy, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. A little silver plate of stale sugar cookies sat on the table like a consolation prize. Let's align, Lydia began. We don't see your original request. I set the binder down with a soft, satisfying thunk. You don't see it now. You saw it then. I opened to the audit page, the one with the tiny chalk outline. Log entry 11:07 p.m. 7/12. Deletion. Here's the trace ID. Ethan blinked. I approved you, Maya. I swear I did. I remember the email. You did, I said, turning a page. And here's Policy 5. 2. 1. Written rationale required within 3 business days. I never received one. Another page. And here's my records request under Rule 3. 9. 10 business days to respond. Lydia's eyes didn't flinch, but her finger paused on the tablet. Where did you get these logs? Training materials. The same ones I used to teach half your department how to find them. I smiled politely. We can loop in compliance if you prefer. A beat. The building's HVAC coughed through the vents like a tired dragon. We'll investigate, Lydia said. And, for now, we'll tentatively reinstate your request pending verification. Great, I said, gathering the binder. I'll also need the name of whoever accessed J. Pierce Assist on July 12th. VPN endpoint shows EU. That should help the verification. Lydia's gaze sharpened. Not fear, calculation. We'll be in touch. Of course, I said, rising. I'll be at my desk, counting lemons. Back at my cubicle, the ceiling light flickered once, twice, and held. I tucked the binder under my desk, behind the spare toner and the emergency Snickers. Someone had tried to write me out of my own calendar. Cute. They forgot who built the calendar in the first place. The trick with corporate war isn't volume, it's paper. thick, numbered, tabbed paper. So the next morning, before most of the office had finished their first coffee, I staged my desk like a courtroom exhibit. Binder open, tabs sticking out like colored flags, policy, logs, requests, compliance. If Lydia from HR happened to walk by, she'd see it. If Ethan stopped to apologize again, he'd see it too. Visibility was the weapon. At 9:27 sharp, Ethan did hover, looking more like a guilty golden retriever than a manager. "Maya," he said softly, "I didn't know Pierce was planning to take that exact window." "If I had." "You approved it," I said without looking up from my screen. "That's all that matters." He shifted. "Yes, but you know how Jonathan is. He doesn't like overlaps. Especially not during big client cycles." Translation: Jonathan wanted Amalfi. Therefore, my vacation disappeared. I closed the binder and looked him dead in the eye. If he wanted those weeks, he could have just said so. But deleting a request leaves a trail. And I don't erase easily. Ethan had the grace to look away. By lunchtime, Sandra dragged me to the break room under the guise of microwaving her leftover pasta. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Word is Lydia's rattled. She hates compliance sniffing around." "Did you really hit her with a Rule 3, 9 records request?" "Of course," I said, stirring burnt coffee. "Deadlines make people honest." Sandra's grin was quick, conspiratorial. "You're terrifying." "I like it." Her voice dropped lower. "Listen, Camille, the assistant, she was in here bragging yesterday. Said she had to fix Pierce's calendar mess while he was boarding the flight." Couldn't stop smirking. My spoon clinked against the mug. "When was this?" "Yesterday morning. Right before 9. She loves being overheard, you know." Of course I knew. Camille wore ambition like perfume, loud and suffocating. That night, my apartment table was covered again, but this time with printed screenshots. Calendar metadata, log extracts, policy clauses highlighted like scripture. In the corner sat a yellow envelope addressed to Office of Compliance, Attention, Internal Audit Division. Not sealed. Not sent. Just waiting. I practiced sliding it across the table, like in the movies. The weight felt good. Then I pulled out my own calendar. On the date my request was deleted, Jonathan had created a phantom event, Operation Sync, private. 11 minutes past 11. But buried in the properties, one field betrayed him, creator Camille Hart. So either Camille was acting on his behalf or she had hijacked the account. Both violations. Both mine to use. I stacked the pages neatly, closed the binder, and whispered to the silence of my apartment. Ghosts don't scare me, but I know how to haunt back. The next morning, Lydia summoned me again, conference A this time, the big room with the stupid inspirational quote wall, "Teamwork makes the dream work." I almost laughed. Inside sat Lydia, expression unreadable. Next to her, Camille Hart in a silk blouse the color of champagne, hair sharp enough to cut glass. She smiled like a cat discovering the canary had filed a complaint. "Ms. Hart," Lydia began, "is here to clarify matters regarding the calendar system." Camille leaned forward. "Yes. I manage all executive scheduling, including proxy access. If there was a deletion, it was a misunderstanding." I set my binder on the table and flipped to the page with her name on the metadata. The timestamp glowed under a neat strip of yellow highlighter. "Then you won't mind explaining," I said sweetly, "why your login shows as the creator of a private event at the exact minute my request vanished." Her smile faltered, just a fraction. "Enough." Lydia's eyes cut sideways, measuring. "Camille." And just like that, the ghost of my lost vacation stopped being invisible. The moment Camille's smile slipped, the whole room felt like it tilted. I swear, even the motivational wall decal lost confidence in itself. She recovered quickly, of course. People like Camille always do. She sat straighter, flipped her hair, and said, "Proxy accounts sometimes log activity incorrectly. I was finalizing an Operation Sync while Jonathan was traveling. If the system shows overlap with PTO requests, it's coincidental." "Coincidental," I repeated, keeping my voice light, almost amused. "At 11:07 p.m. on a Friday night?" I slid the printout forward. "That's not system error." That's a person pressing delete. Her eyes flicked to Lydia, searching for backup. Lydia, in her precise navy dress, didn't move. She just studied the page, fingertip tapping once against the table. I let the silence stretch. 3 beats. 4. Long enough for Camille to shift in her chair. Finally, Lydia spoke. Camille, did Jonathan instruct you to modify this calendar? Camille's smile returned, thinner this time. Jonathan doesn't instruct me. I manage proactively. He expects efficiency. I leaned forward just enough. Efficiency is not the same as erasing employee records. Back at my desk, the buzz of the fluorescence sounded almost triumphant. Sandra peeked over the cubicle wall, eyes bright. Well? Camille blinked, I said, dropping the binder beside my keyboard. First crack. Sandra grinned. Oh, I love when the pretty ones sweat. Mark popped his head around too, eager as always. Are you in trouble? Do we need to start a GoFundMe for your severance? Relax, Mark. I'm not the one who broke policy. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew cracks weren't enough. I needed collapse. That night I parked in the far corner of the office garage, engine off, lights dim. The place smells like oil and damp concrete, always colder than the street above. I sat there with a notepad, running numbers like a detective at a kitchen table. 112 hours of PTO. $4,200 worth. Plus policy violation penalties. If I escalated through compliance, Jonathan wouldn't just owe me vacation. He'd face an internal audit that could freeze his next bonus. Executives hate frozen bonuses more than they hate losing face. And Camille? She was just a hinge. A hinge squeaks, a door closes. Or slams. I wrote one sentence across the top of the page: leverage is time plus proof. The next morning, Ethan stopped by my desk again, wringing his hands like a man in a bad play. Maya, listen. Pierce will be back in 5 days. Can we just smooth this out before then? Quietly. I tilted my head. Quiet like deleting requests at midnight? His cheeks flushed. That wasn't me. Look, Pierce doesn't like confrontation. If he wanted those 2 weeks, he could have asked, I said, my voice still now. Instead, he tried to ghost me. But here's the problem with ghosts. They leave trails. And I know how to follow them. Ethan swallowed hard, muttered something about a call, and retreated. Later that afternoon, Lydia sent me a calendar invite. Subject line: discussion with CEO upon return. Date: next Wednesday, 10 a.m. I stared at the invite, the cursor blinking in the pale blue box. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a line in the sand. Fine. If Jonathan Pierce wanted to play calendar games, I'd bring the whole audit trail to the table. And when the glass walls of Conference A reflected his face back at him, he'd see what I already knew. You can steal time, but you can't bury it. Not from me. By Tuesday morning, my binder had grown into something even I had to admire. Tabs like rainbow teeth, each section sharp enough to bite. Audit logs, policy citations, metadata prints, screenshots, it had become a living thing. And like any living thing, it needed a name. So I wrote it on the spine in block Sharpie letters. The Lemon File. Because if Jonathan Pierce was sipping limoncello on the Amalfi Coast while I sat under buzzing lights, then lemons were going to be the theme of his undoing. The office smelled of burnt toast from the break room that morning, someone having committed pastry manslaughter in the toaster oven again. I walked in with the Lemon File under my arm and felt Sandra's eyes light up. You named it, she whispered, delighted. Of course, I said. A file without a name is just paper. A file with a name is destiny. Mark leaned over his cubicle wall, too curious for his own good. What's in it? Everything, I said simply. Enough that when Pierce walks into conference next week, the walls will sweat. Sandra laughed into her mug. Mark looked vaguely terrified. By noon, I'd scheduled a private 20-minute with Lydia. Her assistant tried to push it off, but I slipped in the phrase pre-compliance alignment in the request, and suddenly her calendar had a gap. Words are magic when you pick the right ones. In her office, a minimalist glass box decorated with a single succulent, I laid the Lemon File flat on her desk and opened to the first tab. Before next Wednesday, I began, I want clarity on one point. Who authorized Camille to delete records? Lydia's eyes narrowed, professional but not unfriendly. Authorization is fluid at the executive level. Policy 5. 2. 1 doesn't flow, I said, tapping the page. It requires written rationale, not midnight deletions through a proxy account. She folded her hands. Maya, escalation to compliance will create turbulence. Not just for Pierce. For the whole leadership team. Is that your goal? My goal, I said evenly, is to take the vacation I earned. To have the company respect that my time isn't disposable. If turbulence is the byproduct, then maybe turbulence is overdue. For a second, I thought she might actually smile. Instead, she closed the binder and pushed it gently back toward me. Then bring your file next week. Let's see how Pierce answers when the room isn't full of his usual audience. That evening, I spread the binder across my kitchen table again, next to a half-eaten takeout container and my cat pretending the audit logs were a bed. I opened a clean notebook and wrote out 15 questions. Why was my request deleted at 11:07 p.m.? Why was Camille's login the one attached? Why wasn't I notified? Why does the system still show the approval timestamp from Ethan? Why does Policy 5. 2. 1 exist if executives ignore it? Each question was a lemon squeezed tighter. Each answer would sting. I looked at the clock, 11:07 p.m., exactly the same time my request had been deleted days before. I whispered into the quiet kitchen, your ghost hour, Jonathan. Next week, it's mine. And I closed the lemon file with a soft, satisfying snap. The week between discovery and confrontation stretched like taffy. Every day, the office hummed with the usual rituals, printer jams, burnt coffee, Sandra swearing under her breath at customer calls, but for me, time wasn't moving. It was coiling. Each morning I opened my inbox to see Jonathan's out-of-office reply, his smug little auto-response taunting me, traveling internationally with limited access to email. Please contact Camille for urgent matters. Of course. Camille, the gatekeeper with a delete key. On Wednesday, a notification popped up, calendar update, mandatory department sync, Friday at 3 p.m. Guess who sent it? Camille. I stared at the invite, my cursor hovering over accept. She'd titled it Team Alignment before CEO returns, which was corporate code for, let's control the story before the boss walks in. Sandra swung by my desk, reading the invite over my shoulder. That's going to be a circus. You ready? I was born ready, I said, tapping the lemon file on my desk. Besides, I have better tricks than PowerPoint. Friday's sync was exactly what I expected. Camille at the head of the conference table, blazer sharp, voice syrupy sweet. Ethan sat near her, visibly sweating into his notepad. A few others from operations and HR filled in the seats, all trying to look invisible. Camille clicked her laptop and the projector splashed a generic slide across the glass wall. Team transparency and alignment. I almost laughed out loud. Transparency? Please. She started speaking, framing Jonathan's absence as necessary strategic travel and our responsibility to keep the ship steady. Then came the line, occasionally, systems show anomalies. PTO requests, for example. We're auditing them to ensure accuracy. Her eyes flicked toward me, quick as a knife. I let her finish, then raised my hand. Funny thing about anomalies, I said, voice clear. They usually have fingerprints. The room froze. Camille's smile stayed glued on, but her jaw tightened. Maya, this isn't the forum. Oh, but it is, I interrupted, sliding a sheet across the table. Audit log. Timestamp. Her name. I'd brought only one page of the lemon file today, like a teaser trailer. Friday, July 12th, 11:07 p.m. Request deleted. Creator, Camille Hart. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan looked like he might faint. Camille's tone sharpened. You're misinterpreting raw data. No, I cut in again, calm as ice. I trained half this company on the system. There's no misinterpretation. Just deletion. Lydia, sitting at the far end, finally spoke. Camille, is there a reason your credentials show as the source? Camille's cheeks flushed, but she leaned into her practiced confidence. Executive proxies require discretion. Pierce trusts me to manage conflicts. Sometimes that means making adjustments. Adjustments. She really said it. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. Thank you for clarifying. That's exactly what compliance will want to hear. And then I let the silence hang, thick and unmovable, until even the projector seemed to buzz louder. That night, in the garage, I sat in my car scribbling notes. Camille had just admitted on record, in front of half a dozen witnesses, that she made adjustments. She didn't realize it, but she'd handed me the rope. I wrote in my notebook, Friday sync equals confession, then underlined it twice. Next Wednesday, Jonathan Pierce would walk into conference A expecting the usual applause. Instead, he'd find a noose braided from lemons and timestamps. By Monday morning, the office smelled like toner and rain-soaked carpet. The storm from last night had leaked through the lobby skylight again, leaving a yellow caution cone by the elevators like a sad sentry. Perfect atmosphere, really. Ghost stories need thunder. Jonathan Pierce's return was 2 days away, and I was ready. Or at least, my binder was. The lemon file had grown fatter, heavier, like it had been eating secrets for breakfast. Inside, Camille's metadata prints. Her adjustments, confession, memorialized in my notes with 3 witnesses who'd already whispered to me in the break room. We heard her, don't worry. Policy clauses highlighted in neon pink because subtlety was for amateurs. And the piece de resistance, the audit trail that proved my request existed, was approved and then buried. I didn't just have receipts, I had the whole receipt roll. At 10:45, I ducked into the server room under the excuse of checking network traffic. The place always feels like a meat locker, air conditioning roaring to keep machines calm while humans freeze. I loved it. No one bothers you there. They assume you're speaking in tongues when you mutter about log entries. I plugged in my flash drive and pulled the latest snapshot. VPN entries confirmed it. The deletion came from Tuscany. Jonathan's digital fingerprints wrapped around Camille's proxy account like oil on glass. Ghosts leave trails. And this one led across the Atlantic. That evening, back at my apartment, I spread everything across the kitchen table again. My cat batted at a paperclip while I rehearsed questions out loud. Why was my request deleted? Why is Camille's name on the metadata? Why does HR Policy 5.2.1 require rationale if executives can bypass it? I practiced keeping my tone flat, calm. Not angry. Angry gets dismissed. Precise gets remembered. I imagined Jonathan in his Italian suit, trying to smile it away. And I imagined the glass conference room, everyone watching. Not me versus him, but policy versus arrogance. And arrogance doesn't do well under glass. Tuesday morning, Lydia passed by my desk and paused. She glanced at the binder, then at me. Prepared? Always, I said. Her mouth curved, just barely. Good. He hates surprises. Oh, I said, closing the binder with a soft snap. This isn't a surprise. It's an audit. She walked away without answering, and I realized something. Lydia wasn't protecting Pierce anymore. She was positioning herself. That told me everything I needed to know. That night, I parked in the garage again, windows fogging with my own breath. I wrote one line in my notebook, underlining each word. Ghosts don't vanish. They testify. Tomorrow, Jonathan Pierce would step back into this office, tan from Amalfi, confident as ever. And I would be waiting in conference A, binder in hand, ready to make the glass walls echo. Jonathan Pierce walked into the office Wednesday morning like he owned the sunlight. Tan, tailored, teeth flashing. His rolling leather bag clattered over the lobby tile as Sandra muttered under her breath at the reception desk, "Guess who's back from paradise?" I didn't even need to look up from my screen to know the exact sound of his shoes, Ferragamo, imported, tapping a rhythm that screamed someone else booked these on a corporate card. "Morning, team," he boomed, loud enough for the whole floor. "Miss me?" No one answered. The hum of fluorescence was louder than the room. At 9:55, my Outlook pinged. Reminder, discussion with CEO. Conference A. I picked up the lemon file, heavy under my arm, and walked down the hall. The glass walls reflected me back, blazer sharp, binder sharper. The girl who used to get dismissed in meetings didn't look like prey anymore. Inside, Lydia sat already, tablet poised like a judge's gavel. Ethan fiddled with his pen, looking pale. Camille perched near Jonathan, hair gleaming, smile rehearsed. Jonathan himself leaned back at the head of the table, suit jacket unbuttoned, Amalfi tan glowing under the LED lights. Maya, he said warmly, like he was greeting an old friend instead of the woman he'd ghosted. Glad you could join us. Let's clear this up quickly, shall we? Of course, I said, setting the binder down with a thunk. Quick works for me. Jonathan launched first. Seems there was a minor glitch in the system while I was abroad. A PTO request didn't sync properly, and Camille had to make adjustments. Nothing intentional. We're all aligned now, right? He smiled at me, confident, expecting me to fold like a cheap file folder. I opened the binder. First tab. Audit log. I slid the page forward. 11:07 p.m. July 12th. Request deleted. Trace ID shows proxy account. Creator, Camille Hart. Jonathan's smile didn't falter, but his eyes flicked toward Camille. She spoke quickly. Like I said in last week's sync, I manage conflicts proactively. The system makes it look harsher than it is. Second tab. VPN log. I slid it across. Entry from Tuscany. Pierce's device. Same timestamp. Same deletion. The room went still. The HVAC groaned above like it was holding its breath. Jonathan cleared his throat. Maya, let's not overcomplicate. These systems are finicky. Policy 5. 2. 1. I cut in, flipping to the pink highlighted page. Denials require written rationale within 3 business days. I waited 6 weeks. Got none. That's not finicky. That's violation. Ethan let his pen clatter to the table. Lydia's eyes flicked from page to page, her silence sharper than any words. Jonathan leaned forward, smile gone. What is it you want? I looked straight at him, voice steady. 2 weeks. Paid. On the record. Starting the Monday after next. And a written confirmation from HR that my request was never legitimately denied. Camille scoffed. You can't just. Yes, she can, Lydia interrupted for the first time, her voice calm but final. She has the audit. She has policy. She has the right. Jonathan's jaw tightened. And if I say no? I close the binder, slow and deliberate. Then I file the lemon file with compliance. Every log, every timestamp, every witness statement. And this glass room becomes Exhibit A. Silence. The kind that tastes electric. Finally, Jonathan leaned back, forced a laugh, and said, Fine. Take your vacation, Maya. We'll confirm in writing. His tan suddenly looked less golden under the LED lights. As I walked out, binder under my arm, Sandra caught my eye through the glass wall. She mouthed a single word, boom. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the vacation breeze already at my back. By Thursday morning, the office smelled like victory, or maybe just like stale bagels from finance's welcome back spread for Pierce. Either way, I had what I wanted, an email from Lydia, subject line, vacation request, confirmed. I opened it twice just to savor it. Per discussion in Conference A, your 2-week vacation request is approved effective August 14th. This confirmation supersedes prior system activity. System activity. Cute way of saying Camille deleted your life. Sandra leaned against my cubicle wall, sipping coffee. So, Amalfi for you too? Not Amalfi, I said, grinning. Someplace better. The kind of trip you don't post on Instagram because it feels too good to share. She raised her mug in salute. Well, hell. Drinks on me tonight. You earned it. But here's the thing about revenge, it never ends at the first concession. Once the balance tips, you see how much weight you can really shift. At noon, I wandered into the file room, the one that smells like paper dust and lemon cleaner, and opened a drawer labeled Employee Records, Archive. Inside, neatly filed, were old compliance reports. I flipped through them until I found one from 3 years ago, unauthorized PTO adjustments. No names, just a summary. I smiled. Ghosts everywhere. That evening, in my apartment, the lemon file sat on the table still thick, still alive. But it wasn't finished. Not yet. I added Lydia's confirmation email, printed and tabbed. Then I drafted a cover letter, not addressed to compliance this time, but to Board Oversight Committee. Just a draft. Just in case. My notebook page for the night had only 2 lines. 1. Vacation confirmed. 2. Ghost still breathing. Because Jonathan Pierce gave me what I wanted, yes. But the arrogance that made him steal my time hadn't disappeared, it was just waiting for the next opportunity. And Camille? She wasn't done either. Friday morning proved it. I walked into the break room, and there she was, whispering to a junior analyst like nothing had happened. When she saw me, her smile was brittle glass. "Enjoy your little victory, Maya," she said lightly, too light. "You think HR will always be on your side?" I poured burnt coffee into my mug, letting the silence stretch before I answered. "Not always," I said. "But logs don't lie. And I'll always have those." Her smile cracked, just enough for me to see the nerves underneath. Back at my desk, I opened my personal calendar. 2 weeks blocked out in bold blue, labeled only vacation confirmed. The screen glowed, steady and bright, no flicker. And for the first time, I believed it. Still, I whispered to myself, the ghost isn't gone. Not yet. But neither am I. The strange thing about winning is how fast the office notices. By Monday, whispers were spreading faster than toner dust through the copy room. Maya got her vacation back. She went up against Pierce in Conference A. Camille actually blinked. I didn't fuel it. I didn't need to. In a place where rumors spread like mold, silence is more powerful than shouting. But the ripple had started. At 11 a.m. I got a Teams message from Noah in IT. "Noah, FYI, compliance pulled some logs from the VPN last week." Guess who they asked me about? Me, let me guess. Pierce? Noah, bingo. They didn't say why, but you might have lit a fuse. I stared at the screen, feeling the buzz of the fluorescent light above. This wasn't just about my 2 weeks anymore. This was bigger. That afternoon, Pierce strode past my desk, his cologne heavy enough to strangle a fern. He didn't stop, didn't say a word. But the set of his jaw told me he knew. Sandra leaned over once he was gone. "He looks like a man who found a lemon seed in his martini." I grinned. Good. I hope it cracks his crown. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table again, binder open, cat pawing at a paperclip. I added a new tab, Compliance Echoes. Inside it, I slid a fresh printout, the email I'd sent myself earlier. Subject: Pierce VPN activity. Body: 1 line. For the record. Attachment: log snapshot. I didn't send it to anyone yet. Just archived it. But now the file wasn't just a shield, it was a weapon that could outlive me. Tuesday, the department held a routine all-hands. Ethan droned about Q3 goals while Pierce sat at the back, silent, scrolling his phone. Camille scribbled fake notes, but her shoulders were too tight, her posture brittle. When Ethan asked for team questions, I raised my hand. "Yes, Maya," he said nervously. "What's the official escalation process?" I asked evenly, when executives override HR policy without rationale. The room went dead quiet. Sandra actually coughed to cover a laugh. Ethan froze. Camille's pen snapped in her fingers. And Pierce? He finally looked up from his phone, eyes narrowing at me. I just smiled, jotting down Ethan's stammered non-answer in my notebook like it was gospel. Later, in the garage, I sat in my car with the engine off, writing one clean sentence on the notepad balanced on my knee. The ghost has started haunting its maker. Because now Pierce wasn't chasing me. He was running from his own trail. And I was just waiting for him to trip. Wednesday morning began like any other. Burnt coffee, fluorescent hum, Sandra swearing softly at the copier. But when I reached under my desk to grab the lemon file, my heart stuttered. It wasn't there. I pulled open every drawer, checked the toner cabinet, even ducked into the maintenance closet with its lemon cleaner scent. Nothing. The binder was gone. By noon, I was sweating under the buzzing lights. The file wasn't just paper, it was my leverage, my insurance policy. Without it, I was just another employee with complaints HR could bury under jargon. At 2:15, I got the email. "Maya, as part of routine compliance housekeeping, we've collected all printed audit logs related to system activity. Please direct future requests through HR. L. Cho." Lydia. Calm, polite, surgical. She'd taken my file. Sandra noticed the panic in my eyes as I reread the message. "What happened?" They just pulled my parachute, I whispered. And for the first time since this began, I felt the ghost shifting in my favor, not as leverage, but as a trap. Chapter 12. Out of sync. The next day, the glitch hit. I tried logging into the HR portal to reprint everything. Access denied. My account had been temporarily restricted pending review. No audit logs. No policy PDFs. No request history. Camille passed my cubicle with a little too much swing in her step. She leaned in just far enough to whisper, "Hard to fight when your toys are taken away, isn't it?" My knuckles went white against the keyboard. She knew. She had to. That afternoon, Pierce called a surprise department meeting. He stood at the front of Conference A, all smooth smiles and fake warmth, announcing a renewed commitment to transparency. Then he dropped the bomb. Effective immediately, all vacation approvals will be centralized through my office. To avoid confusion. Centralized. Meaning Camille. Meaning the fox now guarded the henhouse. The room applauded weakly, but my stomach dropped. The binder was gone, my access was revoked, and now my entire plan was slipping like sand through my fingers. That night, back at my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty spot where the lemon file had once lived. My cat pawed at the blank space like even she knew something was missing. I whispered to myself, the ghost isn't mine anymore. It belongs to them. And for the first time, I didn't know what move came next. By Friday, I'd accepted it. The lemon file was gone. Lydia had stripped me clean, Pierce had tightened his grip, and Camille was practically glowing with triumph. But here's what they didn't know. I never trust one copy. At 8:20 a.m., I slipped into the server room under the guise of checking printer queues. The cold air hit my skin, sharp as always, and I pulled out the little flash drive I kept on my keyring. It looked like nothing, cheap, plastic, red cap cracked from years of use. But inside? Every screenshot. Every log. Every VPN trace. I slid it into a hidden USB slot, opened the directory, and whispered to myself, "Hello, ghost." There it was, intact and humming in digital silence. I copied the files onto my personal encrypted drive, labeled the folder lemon_backup, and felt my heartbeat steady for the first time in days. They could steal paper. They couldn't erase me. At lunch, Sandra cornered me in the break room. "You look like you just buried treasure." Spill. I lowered my voice. Let's just say Camille isn't the only one who knows how to manage conflicts proactively. Sandra's eyes widened. "You have another copy?" I grinned. "Better. I have insurance." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table again, notebook open. I began sketching a new plan, not for Pierce, not even for Camille. For Lydia. Because Lydia had shown her hand when she confiscated my binder. She wanted control of the narrative. Which meant she was nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. I wrote 3 words across the top of the page. Plan B, shadow file. Not paper. Not obvious. Digital. Portable. A ghost that could walk through walls. The next morning, I drafted a short email. To Board Oversight Committee Draft. Subject: Preliminary concern regarding PTO policy compliance. Body: Attached, please find audit excerpts evidencing irregular deletions tied to executive proxy accounts. I didn't send it. Not yet. I saved it to drafts. A ghost waiting. And as I closed my laptop, I whispered, "Your move, Lydia." Because the game wasn't over. It had just changed boards. Monday arrived with the kind of tense quiet you could slice with a letter opener. The office looked normal, phones ringing, keyboards clattering, but underneath, I could feel it, everyone waiting for something. And I knew why. Pierce was holding his breath. Camille was strutting like she'd already won. Lydia? She was invisible, the way smart predators are before they strike. At 9:30, a calendar invite popped up. Informal check-in with HR, Conference B. No subject, no details. I stared at it, then hit decline. 10 minutes later, Lydia appeared at my cubicle. She leaned in, her voice low enough to vanish under the hum of fluorescence. "Declining invites makes you look defensive, Maya." I smiled, calm. "And confiscating files makes you look guilty." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't argue. She just straightened, smoothed her dress, and walked away. By lunchtime, Camille made her move. She accidentally left her phone face up on the break room counter while she chatted loudly with a junior analyst. The screen lit up with a preview of a message from Jonathan. Need to know if problem handled. Don't want noise at board level. I didn't touch it, didn't take a photo. I just watched, memorized, and filed it in the vault of my mind. Jonathan was sweating harder than he let on. That night, at my kitchen table, the notebook filled quickly. 1. Pierce is scared of board noise. 2. Lydia wants control of narrative. 3. Camille thinks she can perform victory in public. It was all noise. The trick was silence. So I drafted another ghost, a sealed envelope addressed to Board Oversight Committee, confidential. Inside, a single flash drive. Not sent. Not delivered. Just waiting in my desk drawer. The act of not sending it was power. Because silence made them guess. Silence made them sweat. Tuesday morning, I passed Lydia in the hallway. She paused, searched my face, and finally asked, "Have you escalated?" I tilted my head, smiling politely. "Wouldn't you like to know?" And I walked away, binderless, fileless, hands empty, yet heavier with power than I'd ever felt before. Because for the first time, they were the ones haunted. And I was the ghost. Wednesday morning hit like a gavel. The air in the office was different, tense, brittle, full of static. Word had spread. The Board Oversight Committee was visiting. No one knew why. Officially, it was routine governance. But routine doesn't send Pierce pacing his office before 8 a.m. I walked in calm, binderless, coffee in hand, notebook tucked under my arm. My desk looked ordinary, no lemon file, no incriminating stacks. Just me, humming softly under the fluorescence while Pierce's world cracked like cheap glass. At 9:42, my inbox pinged. A calendar invite, Board Oversight, confidential session. Attendees, Lydia, Pierce, and me. Bingo. Conference A again. The same glass walls where it all began, except now there were 3 extra chairs, occupied by board members in dark suits, their presence heavy enough to bend the air. Jonathan started smooth. Like always, there was a minor PTO discrepancy, but HR has confirmed it's been resolved. No systemic issues here. I didn't say a word. Not yet. One of the board members, a woman with silver hair and sharper eyes, turned to me. "Maya, do you concur?" I folded my hands on the table. Calm. Precise. No. What happened wasn't a discrepancy. It was a deletion. An unauthorized adjustment made from a proxy account while the CEO was traveling. I have logs, timestamps, and metadata to support that claim. Jonathan's tan seemed to drain under the LED lights. That data isn't. It's not accurate. I smiled faintly. Would you like me to submit the flash drive I prepared for this committee? It contains copies of the logs prior to my account being restricted. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the HVAC seemed to stop breathing. Lydia finally spoke, her voice even. She's not wrong. We did restrict her account. And she did have supporting evidence. We were premature in our response. Translation. Pierce, you're cornered. Camille tried to interject, but the silver-haired board member shut her down with a single raised hand. "Mr. Pierce," the board member said slowly, "we'll be reviewing this further. For now, consider PTO approvals removed from your chain of control. HR will handle them independently." Jonathan opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had no script. When the meeting adjourned, I didn't linger. I walked out calm, binder still tucked under my arm, and headed back to my cubicle. Sandra was waiting, eyes wide. "Well?" she whispered. I slid into my chair, opened my email, and scheduled a 2-week out of office with the subject line, "Vacation confirmed." Then I turned to Sandra, letting the smallest smile slip. The ghost's job is done. That evening, at home, I burned the last printed page of the lemon file in a little metal dish on my balcony. The smoke curled upward, carrying policy codes and timestamps into the night air. It wasn't about the binder anymore. It was about balance. About proving I could not be erased. Being underestimated had been my greatest weapon. And as the final ember died, I whispered the closing line to myself, certain it was true. You can steal time. But in the end, time always testifies.